Today, we are going to talk about the 5 love languages. It is a book by Gary Chapman. I think it was 1992 or 1993, I believe he wrote that. Is that true?
I honestly don't know what the date was.
So the thing that Alan and I are learning about not only like ourselves, but other people from coaching other people, most people end up in relationships by accident and they hope to succeed by accident. But if you want to get better at something, like if you want to get better at basketball, what do? You study basketball. If you want to learn more about plumbing, you go to school for plumbing. You learn that stuff. And I think relationships, a lot of people, maybe they don't know where to learn. Maybe they don't take the time to learn. But I think a lot of people think relationships are an unwinnable game. And Alan and I have systems in place with our relationships and our significant others. Taryn is on the screen somewhere. Hi, babe.
What's up, Taryn?
But most of that is from failure. So, like, Alan and I have failed at every other relationship we've had. That's why we're not in them anymore. And I'm at least 50% of every relationship I've had. So at the end of the day, we also want to go through the systems. We want to talk about the 5 love languages, what they are, how they affect you. But we also want to tell you about our systems and what's best for our clients and anybody that wants help.
Also, real quick, so last week we had Mark Metry on, and we asked him, we have a mastermind with him every week, Wednesday. And last Wednesday, we asked for constructive feedback, and he said it was incredible. So first of all, thank you all for participating. But he did say constructive feedback-wise that we could do a better job about the muting of the audio. So if you guys have background noise, just keep your mics muted, please. And then when you do have a question, there's 2 ways to ask a question. You can either type it in the chat, and then Kevin, myself, or Tiff will read it and then answer it. Or you can unmute, have the floor, and ask your question live. It's totally your call. You ready to get started, Kev?
I'm ready. Let me take a sip of my water here. I'm parched.
Dramatic sip of water.
Okay. So I think what we should do is go through the 5 love languages first. Be nice if I could talk. And then we'll dive deeper into what they actually mean to everybody. So number 1, quality time. Number 2, or I'll let Alan write here. Da-na-na. Da-na-na.
And if you want to, you can click on my screen if you want to see a little better, because I know I'm kind of mini here. All right, number 1 is quality time.
Quality time.
Yep.
Physical touch for number 2. And again, these are from the book. We didn't make these up. I'd love to take credit for it, but we can't. Number 3 is words of affirmation. Number 4 is gifts.
Gift giving. Gifts works. Gifts work.
And then number 5 is acts of service.
All right.
So we'll go through, we'll talk about what they are, what we've seen, and what we've learned about them. And then what I think a good exercise for all of you is to order these in like, how important are they to you? Because again, if you're in a relationship and you have different love languages than your partner, you might quite literally be speaking a different language. And you might think you're doing all the right things when in reality, none of those things are being seen because they're not valued at the same weight or on the same specific way that you think they should be. Okay. So quality time. It depends on different people. So I know for Taryn and I, sometimes it's a little bit different. Like I'm guilty of being okay with sitting on the couch and just kind of like vegging out. And I know Taryn has brought to me on more than one occasion that she wants to have more deep conversations. So quality time for me might just be being around. And I have seen this so many times. I told Alan this, like if you're a man and you move in with your girlfriend, just because you live together, that does not qualify most of the time as quality time. But I want to just set this as the precedent for this whole thing. If you're willing to have this conversation with your partner about the love languages, about the check-ins, you're going to succeed way more than if you just go through this with us, because I don't know your partner. Alan doesn't know your partner. Hopefully you guys do, but if you don't know them at this deep level, it's going to benefit you greatly to be open and vulnerable with these things, because again, if you're speaking different languages, you might think things are worse than they are. You might think that you guys aren't compatible when really your actions aren't what you think they are.
So one of the other things we wanted to talk about today as well is that this is kind of, there's two sides to this coin. Number one, we all have all five, but we have usually a big two that we care about the most. And then we also all have a habit of not only what we like to receive love as, usually by how we got love growing up. Like if you grew up with a lot of hugs and kisses from your parents or whoever you craved love from most, physical touch is probably super important to you. If you grew up with a family who spent a lot of quality time and always had dinner together, quality time is probably more important to you. So we're all wired a certain way, not only in how we receive love, but also how we naturally give love and what love means to us. So not only do we have a big two out of these five for us, but we also are habituated in a certain way to give love in a certain way. So physical touch for me comes very naturally. That's my biggest one and the one that I'm naturally inclined to give the most of. And hopefully Emilia would attest to that. And physical touch doesn't mean just sexual either. It means hugs, kisses, foot rubs, all that kind of stuff.
And that's why it's important to make sure that you're connecting with your partner. Because if you only think that physical touch is intimacy and sexual things, and your partner likes back rubs or holding hands is physical touch, right? That's physical touch, or more hugs or more kisses on the cheek or whatever it is. But I think that at the end of the day, like, there's two goals. Number one, understand yourself at a deeper level. And that's what these questions and these five things will help you do. But then also make sure that you're taking this information to your partner. Because if you have it quote unquote figured out and your partner doesn't, then you're not really playing a winnable game. A relationship is all about growth, and you're going to have difficult conversations. Like Taryn and I have difficult conversations, but it's always the work that we want to do. We want to have an amazing relationship, and an amazing relationship requires extraordinary effort. And it requires vulnerability, and it requires conversations. And I think that if more people learned about relationships and what's behind them, I think more people would succeed. And at least they'd feel like they're in more control. Like if you could Google right now how to get in shape, and there would be billions of things that would come up. If you were to Google how to succeed better in a relationship, I don't know what would come up because I don't think I've ever Googled it. But I don't think it's as many quality things as there is in this book. That's why we love this.
So Kev, do we want to go through and give examples of each of these? Another valuable thing might be, first of all, like Kev said, have a conversation with your partner about what are their most important ones. Have them rate them, their syntax. Then what does that mean to them? Because physical touch, maybe you have a partner that loves physical touch. Maybe you have a partner that loves hand holding, kisses, hugs. Love means something different. So, and then quality time too. What does that actually mean? Do they love going for walks in nature, or do they love watching a movie together? For me, quality time, Emilia would tell you, I love watching an inspiring movie together. I absolutely adore it, right? So that might not be quality time for one of your partners. And if that's the thing you're doing so consistently and it's not having the biggest difference. So like, let's say, like Kevin said, if you want to get in shape, there's certain things that you can do that make a way bigger difference than the other things. And whether it's coaching or podcasting, Kevin and I are always trying to figure out what are the tiny leverage points that open the huge doors. What are the little things that we can narrow our circle of concern around that actually make the biggest difference?
Yeah. And I think understanding, so quality time for me, and there's also this like give and take, right? So anybody that knows me, I love watching fighting. UFC was on 3 times last week. And Taryn understands that, like, for me, that's important. Now, she's grown to like it, which blows my mind. I'm very lucky and blessed and happy about that. But I think I don't think that's quality time necessarily. Like, I don't necessarily expect that to fill her cup. Okay? I think a lot of it is the give and take of being supportive. And she's super supportive of that. So also understanding, like, maybe sometimes your quality time and your partner's quality time isn't going to match up. Like, sometimes you might say, like, well, this wouldn't be my first thing. It wouldn't be my first choice to do this, but it's important to my partner. And I think that's a lot of a relationship. Like, unless you're the same person, you're not always going to value the same things. You're not always going to have the same interests, but it's how much do I want to succeed with this person? How much do I want to support them? how much do I want to show them that I care about them? And a lot of that is doing the things that are important to them. So that's a long-winded way of saying Taryn likes watching UFC with me, and I appreciate it.
So Kev, what is your syntax in order of most importance, just to provide context to everybody? Which one matters the most to you? Which one matters the least? Let's just order them real quick. And everybody should be doing this,
Yes.
in their own notebooks, just because I've spent so much time and energy at times in the wrong arena, and it wasn't working. And so it's really important to get clear on what your syntax is, communicate that to your partner, and then understanding what your partner's needs are again, and making sure you're making a habit of doing those things.
For me, they're actually in the order that we went through, so it's quality time, physical touch, words of affirmation, acts of service, and then gifts. For me.
Acts of service and then gifts. So again, we're going to use Kevin as an example here, if you don't mind, Kev.
Oh, yeah, sure.
But can you give us some examples? So you already gave us an example of UFC being quality time. Yes. Can you give us some examples of physical touch that means a lot to you?
So I love massages. Like I like the oil and the elbow because my back's always jeffing. Like something's always broken on me, and Taryn's really good at massages. So I value that. Obviously, other things I value is in terms of physical touch. Words of affirmation. I love when Taryn says she's proud of me. That's like the jam for me because I work very hard at this. And she always says I'm handsome. I appreciate that. Acts of service. She goes grocery shopping and always says like, what can I get you? Oh, I'm stopping at this place. What can I get you? Like that sort of thing. And like she does the laundry and she's the best when it comes to that. But she always asks like, is there anything I can do for you? So that right there is an act of service. And then gifts, like I don't really care that much about gifts. And that's the thing. And you guys might find this. I don't care about giving or receiving gifts, but I want to give gifts way better than I do.
Right.
Like I've lived the life of a broke entrepreneur long enough where it was like, I want to do these really nice things for you, but I also want to eat this week. And obviously, it's not that way anymore. So I want to make sure that I am giving in the way that I want to give, but you also have to make sure that your partner is going to receive that. Some people don't like gifts because it either makes them feel guilty or they don't feel deserving of them. And that's some deeper work that has to get done. But yes, did I answer your question?
Yeah, very much. So you also bring up an interesting point, and then I want to open it up for questions. But basically, Kevin made a good point there of like, I love to give gifts. So like you would always show up in the studio with a donut for me.
My jam.
So I was also you not only fill your own cup with receiving, but you also fill your own cup giving. But what if you love to give in a way that your partner actually doesn't receive that? Right. And that's why it's so fascinating to have like trade your expectation in for appreciation and your whole life becomes a miracle. That's one of my favorite quotes by Tony Robbins. So the first and foremost thing here is don't expect any of these things. Appreciate the things that your partner is doing and then try to build on that because you can only build on success. Does anyone have any questions so far about the love languages?
Oh, hold on. What's going on in the chat here? There's a free quiz. Oh, here we go. Hi, everyone. Interesting topic. Hello. There's a free quiz. Holly said there's a free quiz on the love languages website that you and your partner can take. Taryn said the same thing. Effort is so important. No questions yet. Any questions? Mm-hmm.
Kev, the framework that you had originally for this, yes. What was the third part of it?
So I have the order of importance, understanding how you receive them, understanding how you give them, and then creating a relationship system. So as Alan said, like we're very big on systems,
right?
In terms of everything. And if you're not doing this, you're probably not going to do it by accident. So say for instance, you're in a relationship and the person that you're in this relationship with isn't necessarily into personal development, quote unquote, or growth. You might have to be the one that brings this to them and says, hey, I feel like we could do a better job at meeting each other's needs. I read this book, and I would suggest reading it, obviously, or you can say I did this mastermind, whatever. I read this book that really opened my eyes to the fact that there are certain things that people look for, appreciate, and value in a relationship, and I want to make sure I'm doing the best job I can with you. And then see what happens. Alan and I are finding that a lot of people are struggling with not being in a relationship with somebody who is as focused on growth as they are. And that creates tension.
Right.
And if you're in this room, you're focused on growth, right? You're doing this every week with us. You listen to the podcast, whatever. Maybe we've been on your show like Stu, it's part of your life. So I always say he or she who is more conscious has the responsibility to bring this to the conversation. Because if your partner doesn't know it, and they're probably, I mean, this stuff can be uncomfortable at first. So if they don't know it, that means they're unaware. If they're not comfortable with it, that means they're scared. What are the chances that they just show up one day and say, hey, let's do this? Sometimes that's going to be your job. And that's, you know, that's part of it. And sometimes that is difficult, but I think that the results you're getting out of your relationship are based on your habits.
Yeah, I wanted to,
go ahead.
No, go ahead, man.
I'm good.
Didn't mean to interrupt you.
Oh, no, you're
so
good.
I wanted to bring a concept to everyone's sense of awareness that I think is super powerful. So imagine here is time, and then here is growth. And this is sort of the compound effect over time, okay, of good habits over time. Now, some people have a linear life, and maybe you connect with someone here. Maybe this is person A and this is person B. And person B has huge goals and dreams. They're dialing in their habits. They're hyper-conscious. They want to be world-class at something, and they're very growth-oriented. The law of attraction, maybe you meet here with someone who is on a linear path. That's okay. Here's the problem, though. If they're not picking up on the growth and accelerating at the rate you're accelerating at, it's going to create a disconnect. And that disconnect is going to get greater and greater and greater all the way up. This I see so often. To me, the two biggest challenges in intimate relationships, from my sense of awareness, and I've had a lot of challenges, is goals in conflict or core values in conflict. So if personal development is not a core value that you have shared, as Kevin mentioned, it's going to be very difficult for you to stay connected to someone who is not growth oriented, because the compound effect over time is going to actually disconnect you. This has been one of my life's greatest challenges. I've always been super ambitious, and I was always afraid to outgrow those I love and be disconnected from them. And so one of the things that I want to make sure I mention here is, let's say you start noticing a disconnect here. Okay. If your goal is to maximize your level of contribution, you're going to have to grow, period. End of story. If you have huge ambitions, you have no choice but to grow. The person you are right now has attracted into your life the person's, places, things, and ideas that a reflection of who you are today, and who you must become is different than that. So let's say you're at an exponential growth rate, and if you're in this meeting, you obviously are into personal development. Let's say your partner is not necessarily as ambitious or not necessarily as into learning and growth. Here's the challenge. You're going to disconnect more and more over time. So what do you do about that? You either go down to where they are, or they come up to where you are. And the tension is going to get greater and greater. For me, in my past relationship, personal development was not as big of a priority. And I can tell you from experience now with Emilia, I couldn't outgrow her if I tried, guys. And it's the most freeing thing in the entire world. And I've been on both ends of this. I always felt pulled back in my past relationships because I was always far more ambitious and far more growth oriented. And I know I'm a little crazy, but the point is why not find your own unique version of crazy, and then have similar core values, have similar goals and dreams, but then have complementary core competencies. So Kevin and myself, anytime he was growing more rapidly than I was, and I know this isn't an intimate relationship, Kev, but anytime you were growing more rapidly than me, we would feel it, or vice versa. And then we would drive to 5. Cody thought that was funny. Good. That's why the drive to 5 was happening. So we found that happy medium. Anytime he was outgrowing me in a certain arena. As a matter of fact, when him and Taryn got together, he started outgrowing me in the intimate relationship arena because he was learning all this stuff. He's actually the one who brought the 5 love languages to me. I was on the struggle bus in my last relationship. And then he helped elevate me in intimate relationships. And then I fortunately was able to attract Emilia into my life by the person I was becoming. And so if you're out there right now and you feel like you're more growth oriented than your partner, you got to have the courage to have that conversation now, because that tension will never, I think of it as an elastic band. The more and more you stretch the elastic band, eventually it's going to snap. But you can be, Mia, I want to give you a shout out. We were on the Hyperconscious Book Club, and you mentioned you have a 7-year-old son who was drinking out of a big cup, and your 1-year-old daughter saw that and was so inspired by that she now drinks out of a huge cup. And yes, she fell forward and apparently spilled a bunch. But the point is that what if you are drinking out of a bigger cup than your partner, from the analogy of this, and you're inspiring them to elevate? That's great. So just because they're not into growth doesn't mean they won't eventually be. So you don't necessarily have to break up, but you have to be aware of it and have the tough conversation.
And so we had Dr. Nikki. Is Dr. Nikki the one who said filters and magnets?
Yes.
So
yes.
if you guys like think of this, you'll start to see it far more clearly. You're either filtering people out of your life or you're magnetizing people in. Like attracts like. So people who do what you do are more likely than not going to be attracted to you. And it's interesting because if you're on this path of growth, the person that you are today, you might be completely different than you were a year ago. So if your relationship is a year old, it might be time to check in with this. Now, again, your partner might be super open to this, and that's awesome. That's amazing. But what you wanted out of a relationship probably was different than what it is now because you were a different human being. You also didn't know what you were capable of getting. That's the other thing. I've helped, or I'm talking to a lot of people about that. Like, well, this was my dream relationship. Okay, but is it now? Is it your dream relationship now? Because you've changed, your partner maybe has changed in a different way, or maybe they're trying to change in a good way. Maybe they haven't changed at all. At the end of the day, like, sometimes it sounds bad, like the way we say these things, but do you want to be the person who is 50 years old and gets a divorce because it was good enough 20 years ago? Like, I don't want to be that. And that's why I'm so committed to the relationship thing. I want to be the best podcaster. I want to be the best speaker. I want to have the best podcast agency, and I want to have the best relationship. And Alan can attest, like I said that before Tara and I even started dating. Like, I want the best relationship, but that also requires the best effort. And sometimes it sucks and it hurts, like we'll get into that when we do the check-ins, but like, there's been times where Tara and I have just been talking and crying over things that I may have done wrong or not done up to my standard. But like, feedback is important. Feedback is important in the mirror when you wake up in the morning, or on the scale, or your bank account, or how well you're doing in business. It shouldn't be any different in a relationship.
So we all understand this concept. If you're in this room, you're already growth-minded. I understand that. Like, you are either at all times, 24/7, 365, you're either getting more in shape or less in shape. You're either getting wealthier or poorer. You're either building or you're decaying. It's a law of the universe. We all understand this. So in your intimate relationship, you are either growing together or, not an and, or you are growing apart at all times. If you're growing apart, that's okay. The key is to figure out that you are, own it, and then figure out why you're growing apart and then what to do about it. So if you are growing apart in your intimate relationship because maybe you're more into personal development or vice versa, what do you do about it? That's what we're going to go into now in terms of our systems. So whether you're into fitness or finance, like, you can't get wealthy if you never look at your bank account. You can't get healthy if you're never looking at the scale or tracking your caloric intake. So same with your relationship, you're going to have to check in. And so it's interesting because no one really came up with this, but between Emilia, Taryn, Kevin, and myself, we've been kind of experimenting with a bunch of different systems. Kevin and Taryn kind of have their own thing now. Emilia and I kind of have our own thing. How do you want to go about this, Kev, in terms of sharing this?
I think we just go through. So I would ask a couple of things. And I think asking questions changes lives if you've never been asked them before. That's always my goal. It's not always to motivate or inspire. Sometimes my goal is to ask you a question that you've never been asked before, because you're going to have to give an answer. What is your relationship based on right now? How do you know how well you're actually doing? Is it just like, I think we're doing pretty well, like things seem well? Okay. What is your system? Do you have a relationship system, or are you just winging it? So that's my question to you. And then we'll go into what we do. So right now, and Taryn and I just started this last week, I think. Every day before we go to bed, we do a couple of things. We ask each other 3 questions. Well, 4 questions technically. Did you feel loved today? Did you feel listened to today? Did you feel appreciated today? I can't talk. And did you feel supported today? And then the 5th question is, what do you need from me? Now, your questions can be different. Maybe your questions are, did you feel connected today? Right? Like, you can cater your questions to your relationship. Those are just the first draft of the questions that we came up with. I'm sure they'll change, but that's what we started off with. And then the reason we say, what do you need from me? That's the feedback. Like, oh, you could have supported me more today, right? this is what I need from you right now. You're giving your partner permission to tell you what they need. And I think a lot of times it's not, unless you're very connected and you have a great communication with your partner, it might be difficult to ask for what you need. Maybe you've been shut down in the past, or maybe, people have said like, oh, it's selfish to ask for what you need. At the end of the day, that's one of the reasons you're in a relationship. Like, Alan and I are in a business relationship for a reason. Alan makes me better. Dave Meltzer is our mentor for a reason. We have a relationship with him for a reason, because he wants to empower people. We help him do that. Everything is based on a reason. And if your reason is to be the best you can be, the best partner, the best lover, the best father, mother, whatever, husband, wife, then you need some sort of system.
So every relationship is a win-win. It's called a copacetic relationship, which means both parties benefit. And if your relationship is not a consistent win-win based on what both parties value, based on mutual goals, mutual core values, mutual intentions, then it's going to degrade over time. Now, here's the interesting thing about an intimate relationship. When we grow, you can't grow without changing. And when you change, so does the relationship, because you're 50% of it. And so we have systems in place. We call it kind of like a catch-all, like so nothing slips through the cracks. Like if there's a crack in our foundation, we want to be aware of that and fix it before it, tears the whole skyscraper down. So, Kev, do you think we should go into what our system is?
Yeah, that was just the daily one. So I realized this, and Tara and I talked about this. We're doing the weekly check-in that, Alan, I'll let you go through that. But
Cool.
If you only jumped on the scale once a week, how much progress would you make in fitness? If you only check your bank account once a week, I mean, you're leaving six days of impact, habits, discipline, feedback on the table. So
right, it's fine.
We did our check-in last night. I think we missed last week. My goal was to do this one instead of the weekly one, but the weekly one, you go so much deeper. So it's very beneficial for sure.
Okay, so the weekly one's pretty intense.
Naturally.
I'll just take you through what Emilia and I do. And you guys, the key is you will not invest in that which you don't create. So customize it to you. This is what we've come up with. Kevin and Taryn have their own unique version of this.
Make it simple too, to start.
Yeah.
Make it simple. Like, it doesn't have to be Alan and Emilia's. It doesn't have to be Taryn and I's. It can be your own version, but make it simple. Because if I told you have to drive 4 hours to the gym and you have to climb through an alligator pit to get there, you're not going to go to the gym, right? So maybe starting in the basement is what you should do. So lowest barrier of entry to start, build the habit, and then you can start to elevate.
Yeah, we started out with the gratitude game, which we'll talk about as well. So, okay, the system is pretty simple. Well, I guess some people wouldn't consider it simple. There's 6 human needs. If you guys have never listened to Tony Robbins' TED Talk on the 6 human needs, it is my favorite TED Talk of all time. And the 6 human needs are universal. There's 4 needs of the human, and then there's 2 of what he calls needs of the spirit, and then we have a 7th one, which is sex. And so the first one, I'm just going to give you them in order that he gave you. So the first one is certainty / security. The second one is uncertainty / variety. The third one is significance. The fourth one is love / connection. And if you guys have not listened to that TED Talk, I promise you it will change your life, at least to some extent. The fifth one, and this is what he calls the needs of the spirit, growth and contribution. Now, I've come to believe that these are the needs that everyone finds a way to meet. Growth and contribution are the ones that bring fulfillment that less people focus on. My goal, and I've talked to Emilia about this in my intimate relationship, is to most effectively meet the human needs so that I can spend most of my time focused on growth and contribution. And so what Emilia and I do is we have a couple questions we ask each other. We actually did this last night. So the first question that I ask her is, did I at all this week, did you feel your light dim with me? In other words, was there ever a time where you felt like I wasn't supporting you, your goals, your ambitions, your core values? The second one is there anything bothering you in our relationship that you wish wasn't bothering you, but it kind of is? And some interesting answers come out on that one. We don't want anything to slip through the cracks here. She asks me a question, which is, have you ever felt caged with me this week? I told her from the very beginning that I've felt caged in past relationships and that I want someone to not want to tame the beast, but to unleash it. It is what it is. So whatever those questions are, they're just level sets of like, let's find any moment of challenge, and then let's figure out why that happened, and then let's try to shift it. So those are the first two questions. And again, she asks me, is there anything bothering you about our relationship that you wish didn't? That actually is. Then we have syntax. So for me, number one is always significance. And then we rate from 0 to 10. Let's say it was a 10. And then we give 3 reasons of what made me feel significant. So, and by the way, we prep for these. So last night, for example, significance. Okay, 10. What are 3 ways that I felt significant based on something that Emilia did? Okay, and then we have 1 improvement for each. So again, find your 6 needs, put them in the syntax that matter most to you. And I highly recommend checking out Tony Robbins' TED Talk, because that will help you understand your own needs and your own syntax. Because we all have all 6 of these guys, but we have a big 2 that really matter a lot. Some people care way more about certainty and make sure everything stays the same than they do about, let's say, growth. Okay? And I'll just go through these quickly. So certainty/security is knowing that you have enough money in the bank, knowing that you're in control, knowing that you have a good house above your head. You know, right now, if you weren't sure that the floor was going to stay up, you wouldn't be listening to me or Kevin right now, right? You need some level of certainty. Uncertainty/variety. So this is my least important one. This means you like fun, unique experiences. You like to do a bunch of different stuff. You guys know me well enough to know that I can do the same thing every day, all day, forever. I'm very robotic. Not everyone's like that. Some people like fun, unique stuff, okay? Significance. This is, I want to be the best. I want to be these are the people that are very mastery driven. They want to be really good at stuff. A good example of significance would be Tom Brady, right? Love and connection. These are people who love friends, family. They want to spend quality time with people consistently. They love being around other people, collaboration. And again, there's no right or wrong. There's only unique to you. Growth, self-explanatory. Contribution. How much do you care about impacting and positively affecting other people's lives? So order these in most importance. And then how well are you meeting the needs of your partner based on these ratings? What are 3 reasons that they're doing well in that arena? 1 improvement. And then Emilia's idea was to add the 7th one, which is sex. And now the only difference between a friendship and an intimate relationship is intimacy. So I think it's naive to think that sex is not super important in an intimate relationship. I know it's very important to both of us. And some interesting things will come out here that you might not have known. What does she like? What does she dislike? What was great about this? What could use improvement, right? So again, these conversations are not supposed to be easy, but they're going to provide tremendous fruit. Emilia and I talked about this yesterday. Kevin and I talk about this all the time. Like, listen, when you see a couple that is passionately in love, they're cuddling, they're hugging, they're kissing, they're loving life, it is just a snapshot. That success on the surface is actually a byproduct of what they're doing behind the scenes. You didn't see the 3-hour check-in that Emilia and I did last weekend. You might just see us by the lake passionately in love, right? You didn't see me crushing the weights for 3 years. You just see me in shape in a bathing suit, right? So again, these are just examples of what is the system that's behind the results. And this is our example, but the key is to customize it to you and then to consistently execute against it.
Yeah, and so Taryn and I do that, and then we also do the 5 love languages on top of that as the weekly. And that's super important too, knowing where your human needs are. Like for me, certainty has always been number 1. Now, it's definitely different now. It's not as much as I needed because I've become more confident. I'm more capable, so it's not the same. But getting clear on those and figure out what makes you feel significant, what makes you feel certain, right? Like if you want to meet your partner's parents and you never have, maybe you feel uncertain about the relationship. How invested are they, right? That's something. Significance. A lot of men feel significant through sex, right? So getting clear on that is going to help your relationship. And then something else I forgot to say. So I've talked about this in the podcast. Every morning, I usually get up at like 5 or 5:15, and Taryn gets up maybe like a half hour, an hour later. She comes out, sits in my lap, and then we do like our morning intentions for each other. Like, what do I want to be to you today? Be to you today. Interesting. But what is my intention regarding us today? Okay, so today, my goal was to make her feel beautiful. I literally texted her 13 minutes ago and said, "You're gorgeous." And I've been trying to do that all day. Now, again, if you imagine this. Imagine if I was walking into a room with you and I said, "I want you to set the intention, close your eyes and set the intention to find everything red in this room." How much easier would it be to see everything red in that room? But if we walked into the room and then walked out and I said, oh, how many red things did you see? You probably didn't see any because you weren't focused on them, right? So that's exactly what this whole framework is, what this whole mastermind is about, living intentionally. You will not be successful by accident. And if you are, it's not repeatable and it's not sustainable. And that's why the systems are so important. That's why Alan and I live by our systems, really. And I think that's what has lended success to us. It's not luck. You know, I thought I got lucky in the past and all of those relationships failed. I wasn't capable of keeping the relationship. And that's another thing too. I get that question a lot. How do you get your dream relationship? You be the person capable of attracting that into your life and sustaining it. Because otherwise it's not going to be sustainable and you're going to lose it. Right. So it's on you. It's on you to become valuable. It's on you to know yourself. It's on you to understand yourself at a deeper level and also not need a relationship. When you get to the point where you're confident in yourself, you're happy, you feel fulfilled, then you can add to somebody else's life. That's the goal, is to add to somebody else's life and be better together.
So because we're talking about intimate relationships, I have a couple things that I want to point out. Number one, Mia, you mentioned effort matters so much. And I appreciate you typing that in because Emilia and I have talked about this too. I think that looking at intentions and at effort is so important, especially at first when you're still learning your partner, because the results won't always be great. So what's an example? Let's say you are not in the habit of giving physical touch and you find out your partner, that's like their most important thing. You're not always going to naturally do it. You're going to need reminders. You're going to need some compassion when it comes to leveling up in that specific arena, because maybe it doesn't come naturally. The physical touch piece comes very naturally to me, but other certain things maybe don't. Like maybe acts of service aren't as natural, right? So understand the intentions are pure from your partner. Take a look at the effort, not just the results. That's super, super important. The other piece that I want to mention here too is, listen, if you are not good at meeting your own needs in your own life, especially the human needs, you're going to be needy and you're going to be needy to your partner. So don't rely on them for this. We got Diogene coming in.
Got it.
Okay, thank you. So if you can't rely on your partner to meet all of your needs, okay? I believe true love is in the place where you want love, not where you need it. Neediness is different. Like if you take the oxygen out of this room, I'm going to die. I need oxygen to survive. If you're treating your relationship like that, you're going to suffocate your partner. And I know we've all been guilty of that in the past. And that goes for business partnerships, friendships, all that stuff. What if you live from the place of pure abundance? You're so effective at meeting your own needs that you can be self-transcendent. You can be selfless. But you can't be selfless unless you have the oxygen mask on yourself first. You have to be good at meeting your own needs too. So it's not just about meeting your partner's needs. It's about meeting your own needs so that then you have an overflowing cup to invest in your relationship.
And the better you do at meeting your partner's needs, if you've talked about this is the beautiful thing. And it's kind of like, I'm sure a lot of you guys know Brene Brown. She talks about if you start a conversation, a difficult conversation with a story I'm telling myself, you're immediately level setting like, I might be way off here. I have no idea if this is even real, but this is how I feel. That's all I'm going to say. This is how I feel. If you start doing better in meeting your partner's love languages and basic human needs, if you're in a growth relationship, they're going to do the same because you're talking about it every week and you're checking in every week. How did I do this week at making you feel significant? How did I do at helping us feel love and connected? Like, how did I do? You got love and connection on there?
Yeah, love/connection right here.
So how did I do? And then you get to tell them how they did. It's a free place to give and receive feedback.
Right.
And no matter what, you're either going to get feedback along the way or you're going to avoid feedback long enough to sabotage the relationship. And it's like that with anything. We have a mutual friend who became so overweight. It got to the point where he stopped shopping for jeans because it was too much feedback. And he ended up being, I don't know how many pounds he ended up weighing, but he was
360.
Extremely unhealthy. Now, if he took that feedback earlier on, it might not have gotten to that point. Right. And with a relationship, guys, like the divorce rates, the breakup rates, they're so high for a couple of reasons. Number one, people think relationships should be easy. They're not.
Oh, yeah.
Nothing is easy. Nothing,
wrong belief.
Right. As long as it's the work that you want to do. It's always going to be some form of work. I signed up to do this work. I love this work. I don't ever want to stop doing it. But that's why it's important to find somebody who values the same thing you do. And they also want the same thing out of the relationship. That's the other thing too. Like, you're both looking for a result. Make sure it's a similar result.
Kev, there's two people that we learned a ton from on the podcast, and hopefully you guys all learned from her as well. Both of them. One of them is Maya Diamond, and one of them is
Tori Leto?
Oh, Tori Leto. I can't believe I forgot that. Yes, so Tori Leto said one thing at Top Notch Live that blew my mind, which is the point of a relationship is for growth. Imagine two couples, okay? Couple A, couple B. I do this all the time. Couple A, their main focus and the point of their relationship is to grow, okay? And to contribute beyond themselves, which you can't do unless you grow. Couple B is certainty. Those are two different lives. Let me explain. If you're basing your relationship all on certainty, that means nothing can change and everyone has to stay the same. Therefore, no one's going to grow. Therefore, you're not going to feel fulfilled. Versus couple A, when they have challenging moments, it's an opportunity to learn each other at a deeper level and actually do something about it. I remember Mark Metry, we were at Dunkin' Donuts, and he had never had a long-term intimate relationship up to this point. And he was asking Kevin and I, and he was seeing us succeed in this arena a lot. And this was probably, like 6 months ago, Kev?
Yes, the good old days of being able to go to Dunkin' Donuts.
And we were talking about all this stuff. I know, right? Crazy. We were talking about all this stuff, and he's like, how do you guys know so much about this stuff? And I turned to him and I said, honestly, massive failure compounded over time. Like, I learned so much through my own mistakes, through my own misunderstandings, but I did one thing differently. Every time I screwed something up or didn't understand something or didn't know why something happened the way it did, I went to the drawing board and I went and learned. I can't even tell you how many seminars I've taken about relationships. I can't even tell you how many times I went to the drawing board and tried to figure out, like, what is going on here? Like, why won't this work? And all of this came through distinctions and failing forward. And there's two things that I want to say here. One is going to be growth. Having a growth mindset in your intimate relationship is everything. Emilia and I, literally, our main focus is to grow and contribute as much as we possibly can. And therefore, every challenging moment is an opportunity to learn something about ourselves and each other and to grow. So that's number one. Number two, emotional availability. This is Maya Diamond. She gave a TED talk about this. Emotional responsiveness, I think, is what the TED talk was on. But like, if you're constantly an empty cup and you have nothing to give all the time, that's going to erode your relationship. And so I'll literally, before I pull up to Emilia's place, I'll say, flush, relax. Like, I'll even put it on a specific song that relaxes me right before I get to her place. And as a matter of fact, when I don't do this because I'm on the phone with somebody or whatever, she can sense it. She can sense that I'm unsettled. So prime your mind in advance. Okay, if I'm going into this for quality time, I need to be resourceful. And if you're not resourceful, figure out how to get yourself in a resourceful state. Maybe it's a cold shower. Maybe it's, meditation, whatever it is. You want to go in with love, because if I'll just say this, the acronym that I use is HALLT, HHALLT. If you're hungry, horny, angry, lonely, late, or tired, halt, because you're about to hurt somebody. Get back in a resourceful state, get back into abundance, and then go into the room and lead with love. And we just did an episode on that.
Holly put in the chat, and this is a great point too. Maybe that's why my husband shuts down when I try to discuss stuff with him, overwhelmed by feedback, even when it's not negative. I think taking feedback is a practice. And this is the other thing too. Maybe in the past, for any of you, not just Holly and her relationship, but maybe you've been given feedback and it was painful to you. Feedback is a lot harder to take if you don't know how to fix it. That's one thing. So like, sometimes you need the answers with the feedback. This is the way I feel. This is what we could do better. That's one thing. But I think feedback, sometimes I feel ashamed when I get certain feedback. I don't feel good about myself. And Taryn said, like, I don't want to make you feel bad. It's not about making me feel bad. It's about making me feel what's real. We can sugarcoat it all day, but like, that's not going to help either of us in the long term. And I'm never going to hold it against her for telling me the truth. Like, that's what I want. That's what I signed up for. So I think that's kind of the commitment, is like, look, from here on out, and maybe this is a conversation for you, Holly, I don't know, but from here on out, we need to be completely transparent with one another. Because at the end of the day, we're only cheating ourselves. And let's just start there. Let's start with some small feedback. What are things that you do great? Like, let's start with a positive. Lead with praise, right? These are the things that you did great. These are the things that we could do better. And that's the other thing too, is like, and Taryn and I have said this, like, I don't want to say I give you a 7 out of 10 this week. I think it should be, and I think I could get better at this, Taryn. We as a couple get this score because of this. It's not just her. It's not just me. We're a team, and we take that responsibility and we share it together. And I think that's the way a relationship should be. So just want to know. We got 14 minutes. Just time check.
Super powerful. Any other questions in the chat? I got to check in with it.
I got it.
There is no end to learning your partner. Very true, sweetheart. That's another intention to set as well. If your partner's growth oriented, they're going to change. You need to encourage that. And you need to continue learning them. The moment you think you know your partner inside and out is the moment you start messing up, in my opinion. So you got to keep learning. And that's what the system will do too. You're going to keep learning and growing. Babe, you sent me an audio from when we first met, or a week after we first met. I listened to it today and I was like, oh my God, we are so different. And that was 7 months ago, babe. It's crazy how much we've grown. But that's the thing. Like, we have these. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, how do you figure out growth when it comes to like the growth aspect? How do you rate yourself, or how do you rate each other, or how do you rate, like, what are the most important things? Is it books read? Is it tough conversations had? Like, what matters the most?
Well, that's a great question. So for her and I, it's a little different. So usually she rates me lower in growth, which is interesting. Usually that's one of the lower ratings, which I find fascinating. Yeah. So sometimes she'll give me like a 7 or an 8 or whatever. And in my head, it's like, oh my God, like, we're just constantly hammering it. But she wants me to send her speeches. I sent her my favorite speech of all time by Steve Jobs, 2005 Stanford Address. Like, she loves when I send her podcast episodes that I think will help her. She wants the improvement last night was, I believe, help her more in corporate America rise in her career. So she wants more growth than anyone I've ever met, honestly. She wants more of this stuff than anyone I've ever met, which is very, very beneficial because I love this stuff. Usually I give her a 10 in growth because I'm like always in massive growing pains and like I'm doing this all the time. And she's helping me grow so much. But for her, for example, one of the really good things she's done is she helps raise my awareness from an outside perspective on where maybe I'm pouring too much into someone who doesn't really want it, or hasn't really earned it. Or maybe I'm investing too much time and energy into someone who is not really appreciating that. And maybe I need to disconnect a little bit. She's really protecting my time and energy from over delivering in certain arenas to my own detriment. Because it's this balance between my own personal growth and then constantly contributing to others. And she has an outside perspective on that I can't really see from being inside the frame. And so she's raised my awareness tremendously. And Kevin does this for me all the time too, of like what other people are thinking, because sometimes I lose sight of, the way they perceive things versus the way I perceive things. And so that's one example of
fire.
Yeah.
We also, and this is something I forgot to mention, it's interesting because once we started talking about this, I was like, oh, we do a lot more than I really think.
Right.
We also do gratitudes every night. Before we go to bed, we say what we're grateful for, the gratitude game in bed. And just imagine, like, think of it this way. And Alan and I have done several episodes on this, but like during Thanksgiving, people say what they're grateful for. There's like one day where you're thankful for something. You spend time with your family. You talk about what you're grateful for. If you did that every day, your life would be different. Imagine if you did that every day in your relationship. How different would your relationship be? Right? Like, a lot of these fundamentals are just fundamentals of loving yourself. That's what, like, we check in with ourselves every day. Why aren't we checking in with our partners? Right? We measure our success on our system of success. Why aren't we measuring our relationship success? So a lot of these are just fundamentals of personal development and personal growth. But I think that a lot of times you got to be vulnerable. Like, Alan and I have had many discussions. And like, honestly, we're talking about sex. We're talking about our relationships. Like, but this is what it takes. And this is the conversation you're going to have with your partner. So it takes vulnerability. And sometimes that's the hardest thing. But as long as you're in a relationship where you can trust the person, I always say the level of vulnerability is going to determine the level of communication. If you can be authentically yourself, you're going to be just fine. Taryn said, what about the value of celebration, acknowledging success? Oh, I like that. Ellen and I don't do that at all because we're the worst.
And there's a prime example.
What's an example of that? Do you mean celebrating success together, or like somebody got a promotion at work? Like what's your idea of that?
No, I mean, I think you kind of hit it a little bit there when you were talking about gratitude. I think just that can all be the same thing, but just acknowledging, I think you can always be working and working and working towards something, but if you always putting the goalpost further and further ahead, you never actually get to that goalpost, and you never get the opportunity to turn around and say, wow, we did this. We were struggling with this one part of our relationship, and look how great we did. And I think there's a lot of value to that, to kind of boost your self-esteem and also add value in the relationship.
I love that.
So Emilia and I talked about this a lot when we first got together. Gratitude versus ambition. So I had never met anyone more grateful than her. She doesn't miss anything. Like all the little things that I'm doing, she was so intricate in her gratitudes. And I was like, oh my God, she's noticing everything, which is so wonderful. Because in past relationships, I'd put all this effort in and it would not get noticed. So, but we also talked about how every strength has a weakness. And we did an episode on that last week, Kev. But gratitude is a wonderful thing, but not if it takes away from your ambition. And ambition is a wonderful thing, but not if you're never grateful. And so we did an episode, Kev, on grateful dissatisfaction. You want to be super ambitious. I'm the world's biggest believer in ambition. If you don't have ambition, you're not going to have to become much. And that's not good for anyone in your life. It is what it is. Decide to go pro. I have nothing else to say about that. Gratitude along the way, though, is absolutely critical, because then you'll always feel about what you don't have. You'll always feel about what you're not yet. And I think that's where the gratitude game comes in, because you're going to feel what you focus on. And so every single night, Emilia and I have literally never missed since we started. We've never missed. One time, I think we woke up in the morning and we were like, oh my God, we missed. And then we made up for it. But the point is this: every single day for the last nearly 7 months, I've tried to find things to be grateful for about Emilia and our relationship. Tell me that's not a different life than just winging it. It's a completely different life. These small disciplines change the game, and you have to commit to it, and you have to never miss. And I have, hundreds, over 100 now, voice memos that she's sent to me of things she's grateful for. If I'm ever in a bad mood, I can pop one of those on and I'm going to feel like $1 million about myself. It's wonderful. And I can't do too much of that because that'll go to my head. But I think that the key is wanting a magnificent relationship and always wanting to strive to get better in every way you possibly can for your partner and for your family, but also being grateful about what is simultaneously. And that's the hardest dance. It's a dance between these two extremes.
And you don't know what level, like I told somebody, I think Taryn specifically, our relationship has been one of the biggest points of growth for me. And this person said, like, you got to give yourself some credit. And I said, no, you just don't understand. Like, I give myself plenty of credit. Trust me, that's not what this is about. I just mean like the cause and effect. If you want a great relationship, you have to be a great person. If you want an extraordinary relationship, what do you have to become?
Right.
Like, what do I have to become in order to sustain this? Not what do I have to do? Who is the person that I have to become? A person who doesn't lose his temper, a person who's patient, a person who's supportive, a person who's loving, all of those things. You got to get rid of your junk, because at the end of the day, a relationship is a mirror that never goes away. It's always there. And it is the clearest mirror you will ever look in.
Oh, yeah.
You'll see things you don't want to see. But sometimes the only way to fix something is to, anytime, the only way to fix something is to see it first. I just want to say this. I appreciate everybody joining us on Memorial Day. I know we have some military people and families in here. I appreciate you guys so very much. You are far braver than I could ever be, and you guys are unreal. Appreciate you so much. So I just wanted to say that. Yes.
Kev, I do have one thing too quickly. So I know we only have 5 minutes left. We've implemented a lot of systems. We've done a lot of trial and error. We've always been trying to win in this arena, for lack of better phrasing, succeed in this arena. Kev, if you could only tell everyone to implement one thing that you think would make the biggest difference in their intimate relationship, what would it be?
Seek feedback, whatever that means to you. I would do something every day. Even if you did like The three questions. Did you feel loved? Did you feel supported? Did you feel appreciated? What do you need from me? I would do that every day to start, because I think that would, you're very welcome, Cody. I think that would make, if you want to lose weight, what should you do? Just get on the scale and figure out like where you are now. Like, what's your goal? What's your goal for your weight loss, right? So whatever is going to get you feedback that you can take and construct upon, that is, I would say that's the first thing. And then decide in advance. Do you just want a relationship, or do you want an extraordinary relationship? You guys don't, because you want an extraordinary one. You want an extraordinary life. You wouldn't be here listening to Alan and I blabber every week if you didn't, right? So I'm sure it carries over to your relationship, but have the audacity to say that. You don't have to have a average relationship. You don't have to. You don't. And I'm sure you guys see a lot of people that do. And I am like so against that, because you spend so much time with your partner. Like, it should be amazing. And you deserve amazing if you're willing to work for it. I believe that.
This is the most fulfilling part of life, in my opinion. Your intimate relationship is, if that's not right, everything else in your life is going to feel off. I've been there. The one thing I would say, if I could only pick one thing, is get crystal clear on your core values, and then figure out if there are core values in conflict. I made the mistake for too long being with someone who did not have similar goals and dreams and did not have similar core values, and it caused me more pain than I want any of you to go through. So that's what I would say.
Right on. All right. Any questions before we go? 3 minutes.
Can I throw something out there?
Of course you can.
Hi, everybody. First of all, the quiz that Holly mentioned in the chat, if you are just starting out on this journey with your partner, do that. It's great. It's like a very simple quiz. It's going to have questions about, like, do you prefer getting coffee from your partner spontaneously, or a back rub, a back rub? Like, it's going to ask you pretty simple questions, and then you're going to end up at the end with answers about what your priorities are. The other thing is, like, when you end up with your results, like, think about it, and then, like, one of mine is gifts. I love gifts. It's pretty weird to say that I deeply want Kevin to give me gifts. Like, it's uncomfortable. It's true. But Kevin was like, hey, if you feel loved through gifts, then, it's good that I know that. And it's not, I don't need a car, but you know what I mean? Like, it might be uncomfortable to say, like, hey, I prioritize, like, physical touch in the form of sex. That's super important to me. But you have to let your partner know, or you're not going to enjoy your partner, and your partner's not going to enjoy you. The other thing is, if you're single, this still applies to you. Gary Chapman has 1 million books. There's one for military families, work relationships. Check out his website. There are a bunch of different books that all relate to the love languages, so check them out.
Thank you, babe.
That was awesome, Taryn. Thank you for saying that.
Anything else?
Parting remarks.
We appreciate you guys.
Thank you all for joining us on Memorial Day.
We don't have fans. We have family. We appreciate you guys so much. And always reach out. Like, if there's anything we can do for you guys, please reach out. We want to help you guys in any way, shape, or form we can. Nothing but love for you guys.
Thank you all for joining us. We love you guys. And let us know if you have any additional questions, and let us know if you want a specific topic for next week.
Yes.
Thank
Also,
you.
thank you for joining, sweetheart.